Hello, folks. Welcome to Business Spotlight. My guest today is passionate about education. In fact, she started teaching at the age of 12 and has continued to do so throughout her career. Her business is all about raising the standards, the educational standards for children with special needs and disabilities. I'm delighted to welcome today as my guest, Dr. Anita Devi. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Mark.
Let's dive straight in. I can't wait to tell this story. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started your business?
To be honest with you, it wasn't my intent to go that way. So I come from a family that's been in the business arena. My heart was always in the classroom, being the practitioner, hands-on. But, you know, life situations happen and they kind of move you into different places and you learn different skills, you acquire different things. And I moved from the classroom and senior leadership to a local authority role, which I totally, again, loved. I thought I could, I was in about 80% of the schools in that local authority. And, I could honestly see myself doing this for life. But local authorities have also changed and, funding and all sorts of things that happen in that political arena. And I ended up becoming a consultant, which became the foundation of the business. And if I'm honest, at that stage, when you're transitioning from, a practitioner into having a business per se, I wouldn't have said that I would call myself a business owner or a business entrepreneur. I was a consultant. I was the product. I think over time, I learned to embrace the meshed identity of edupreneur. So yes, my heart is still in education, but there is a side that I am entrepreneurial, and it's about bringing those together. And that took a while. So there was a metamorphosis that took place, but it wasn't an overnight kind of, I'm going to wake up this morning and just do this.
That's fascinating. In that metamorphosis, as you described it, in that transition, there must have been some challenges along the way. How did you, what challenges did you face, and how did you overcome them, Anita?
I think one of the core challenges to start with was around identity, because as an educator, my identity was rooted in the teacher in school. And so I had to do quite a bit of work around positioning my own identity, because I've got to feel comfortable in who I am to make my clients, customers, people like partners we work with also comfortable. So I spent time with that. And I think that was shaped through looking at my values, the vision, the mission. And as much as I was clear on what we do, or what I did when I was, working as a consultant on my own, I think I also defined what I wouldn't do. And I think one of the challenges when people take on business is you're worrying about cash flow, you're worrying about how will I get clients, and you want to take on as much work as possible. I was quite the opposite. I actually went out and spoke to a lot of people before I went into business and said, what do you do if you get too many clients? And I had a lot of people laugh at me and actually say, we haven't even got one yet. So why are you asking this question? And I said, but I want to be prepared. So I went in with expectation of being successful and prepared for that, because it's easier to walk down that, and scale down than it is to scale up suddenly. Those systems and structures I put in early on helped mitigate some of the challenges that come down the road. Business, I think the first few years you learn about where your cash flow cycles are. And being an edupreneur, one of the cycles we have is that we are still aligned to the school calendar. And so there are some months that are going to be quite empty, dry. I mean, August is a classic. December is also quite challenging. So I had to learn about those kind of cycles and actually ensuring that we had enough revenue in the other months to cover when it was a drier season.
Your customer base is all about schools, academy trusts, local authorities. How did you go about building that customer base and establishing a strong brand in your marketplace?
As I said, it started out with as me as the individual, as the product, the company. And we kind of, again, metamorphosis. Butterflies is my thing, if you know me online. We had another metamorphosis into Team ADL. So going back to me as the individual, because I was very clear on what I would do, I defined my unique selling product, my USP, my niche. And so within that field of favor, I was known to be doing this, but not everything. And I think, again, it's so easy when you become an entrepreneur to think, I've got to do everything, particularly if you come out of a practitioner world and you're then commercializing what you do as in terms of your services, your skills, your knowledge. I was actually quite focused and funneled in terms, if you like, that this is the only things I'll do. So people would come to me just for that. In truth, active marketing budget over the last 17 years in terms of paid advertising has been £17.50. So we don't advertise in that kind of paid way. But when I get calls, or we get calls about, can you come in and work with us? We always follow up with the story. And it's incredible, some of the stories of how people have found us, how we've been referred. I find that interesting as well, because it's a lot of it is the individuals. A lot of it is because we do a very niche approach. And so it makes it much more personal when we are actually working with different clients.
We're going to come and talk on in a moment about the power of relationships. But before we do that, your business is very innovative and creative. Could you tell me how you foster that culture in your organization?
The weird and wacky. So I think we're quite intentional about being creative, and we're intentional about being creative from a place of someone presents us a problem, we find the solution. You know, and we kind of think, what would be the ideal world? What would the different solutions look like? And then we look at how do we shape that? How do we communicate that? So we do a lot of problem solving. But some of the stuff that we do that's creative isn't problem solving. It is about foreseeing what we think the market should look like, how we want to shape the sector. And so we do a lot of envisaging and dreaming. I'm very particular about our time management and how we manage our time. We have set boundaries. And within that, rest is really key. And there is a synergy between rest and creativity. If you're constantly on this hamster wheel, you're not going to have the headspace to think out of the box. And so, again, with the team, with myself, I'm quite intentional about let's make time to do some of that out-of-box thinking. Our team meetings, we've got team all over the country. So 2 out of our main 3 meetings a year as a team are online. And we do weird and wacky as part of our team. So we've had summer parties, we've had hat parties, all sorts of strange things online. But again, I think if you want your team to be creative, you've got to be creative in the way that you nurture them, in the way that you communicate to them, and the opportunities that you give them to be crazy, if you like, and I mean crazy in a good sense, during that environment so that they feel safe.
Has there been a pivotal moment or a significant decision that you've made that's really impacted on the growth of the business?
I think it would be about 2 years ago. So we'd evolved into Team ADL a while back. We're getting established. We've never been keen to engage with government bids and funding, mainly because a lot of the stuff we bring is quite niche. We don't want to be driving the political arena. But, you know, again, we're in an interesting world. And so I went to a particular meeting just to kind of listen, because my strength, I would say, is strategy. And I'm sitting in this meeting listening to the problem as they've defined it. And I sat and thought, you know what, we could do this, and we could do it well, and we could do it differently, and we could be creative and innovative. And so within 24 hours, I galvanized about 15 partners, including a university, a national tech company, a few other publishing house, a few other people. And we put together a proposal and a bid to the government for developing special educational needs and disability. And what's been really interesting is because everyone's now starting to reference special needs and disability in the supply and demand concept. Now, I find this really bizarre because we use supply and demand within the business world, the economy. You know, it helps us define quantity and our pricing when we're actually producing products. But to put that in the SEND world with where we actually are doing a civic duty, where it's a public moral obligation, I find this slightly bizarre, if I'm honest with you. But it's made me think, because the project that we eventually evolved, which is called 365 Send, actually positions supply as being greater than demand. And that's actually what we need right now. And the only way you can do that is if you cut the price low. So we support schools with what we would call high incidence, low level needs for £1 a day. So it makes it affordable for the small school as well as the large school. And that then saves their resources to look at those low incidence, high level needs. But I just think it's really interesting how those things came together. So that was quite, if I'm honest with you, a pinnacle moment. It was pinnacle because we didn't actually wait until the government announced the whole procurement business and tendering with the government it was a huge learning curve for me. They look at it from finance and all sorts of things, and it takes a couple of months. And we wanted to build an app and we wanted to get going, so we just did it. And I think that's one of the things about an entrepreneur. If you have an idea, you don't wait around for the money and the resources to come, you go with it. The 4th of January 2022, we announced that we are doing it, much to the government's surprise, because I then got a communication saying, but we haven't decided. And I said, well, we're going with it. You're either on board with us or you're not, but we're doing it. And we have. We got fantastic support from the Royal Society of Arts. We've had media coverage. We ended up speaking on one of the Academy shows that the government funded. I think for me, that was quite pinnacle.
You mentioned earlier about how you're very, very focused on making sure that your team have a really good work-life balance, and that you make sure that, you know, time doesn't kind of encroach, or business time doesn't encroach on personal life. Can you share with us some of the strategies that you have used to make sure that you keep all of that in check?
So there are 3 main things that we have as non-negotiables in the team. The first is we don't work evenings. So 5:30 is the cutoff, 6 if we're presenting to twilight sessions, or sometimes we're doing governor training. But no one works evenings. When I say that, there is flex built in. So I have people on my team who will, you know, go out, take their kids out in the daytime, and they may choose to work in the evening because they've had the day off with the children, and that's fine. But what we don't do is any external communications after 5:36. No one works weekends. Okay. And again, I have team members who will take 2-3 days off in the week and then choose to work 1 day in the weekend. But they're getting that balance. They know what I mean by rest. We've also cut down emails. So we have an internal communication system, which is very different to our external. So externally, we're also using emails, but internally we have a different communication system, which is through an app. And to be honest with you, I mean, I can go away. In September, I was out in Switzerland working with schools. I took my laptop, but the leaders out there kept saying to me, do you not want some time to go and, you know, go online and do your emails? And I said, no, quite frankly. I'm here to work with you guys, and I'm going to be focused in that. I think I was there for 2-3 days. I didn't look at my emails once, came back, and they all got sorted within 2 hours, if that. So I think we don't have that email burden. And finally, I do expect my team to have intelligent use of social media. So ranting is an absolute no-no. Challenging is absolutely, encourage it, because I think that's where you get good conversation. I'm quite clear on those kind of boundaries, and I do model that myself. They know that, they see that in what I do. Occasionally, you know, one of them will slip and send me a message, you know, send an internal message on the Sunday. You can be absolutely sure on the Monday morning, I will contact them to say, can we let this go, please? So I think there's just some boundaries.
You mentioned earlier that, you referenced that you're not using paid for marketing strategies. Could you tell me a little bit about the growth strategies that have worked well for your business?
So a lot of it is down to good comms. I think, you know, it's communicating to individuals what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what difference it will make to them. And I think also setting expectations. We are not expecting full penetration of the market. So it's about 22,000 schools within England. We're not expecting that level of penetration. So, you know, we have a target that we want to meet, our KPIs, or we use OKR. Again, that's being very realistic. When we develop a new idea, a new project, a new process, a new training, or whatever that may be, we don't just think of the end product, and we actually think of the full process, right? From who is our typical client or partner in this, who would, you know, how are they going to engage with us? How do we streamline the communications with them? Again, we're not trying to add to workload. So are we doing anything that would seem burdensome to them? Because that can be a massive turn off. Have we got our pricing right? And then actually start to communicate. And, you know, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. It's the way the world goes. So we're constantly reflecting. I think we have found that in a lot of the innovations that we've put out, we're often 2 years ahead of the market. We know that. We've seen it in several kind of activities. And so we know that we've got to play the slow game sometimes before the world catches up. But when they do, they're ready. We've had people test it. We've got case studies, testimonies. all of those things to kind of then support. And we've tried our systems. I think that's really key, because everyone talks about scale up. Scale up, really, when you're an entrepreneur, you're not going to, you want the scale up of your business growth, but that isn't necessarily proportionate to how many people you employ or your premises or any of those kind of other resources. So you've got to plan scale up in a way that assumes different models. So how do you scale up with your current level of input activity, let's say, whether that's human resource or other physical resources? And then think about, well, okay, if we were to increase our input, human resource or otherwise, by 2%, what impact would that have on the scale up? And looking at those kind of relational values, because sometimes I think it can be really easy to think we're going to scale up and what we need to do is have more input and more people on team. Well, actually, but if you don't have the cash flow and the finances, you can't, it's a bit of a chicken and egg with the entrepreneur, and particularly if you're being innovative and trying something new, you've got to get the market to your place.
And you're clearly, you touched on it just now, you're clearly a people business. Could you tell me a little bit about building strong relationships and the role that that's played in your growth?
Relationships for me is at the heart of special needs. It's at the heart of business. And so for me, the two synergize really well. I think it's about, people talk about authenticity, integrity, the 7 principles of public life. And I think all of those are great. We're very clear on our values. We're very clear on our vision. We're very clear on our mission. So we communicate those quite clearly. But I think also our business model is that we're not here to create individuals or organizations to be dependent on us. Invariably, we get called into schools that are in a challenging position because that's what consultancy is about. You're there to go in, turn it around and leave them in a better place. So actually, as we go in, we're writing our exit plan, and we're writing our exit plan with our clients. And, very often they find this a very strange concept because there are others who are in the same space as what we do, but what they want to do is accumulate more and more clients. And that's, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's different. We are very clear that actually success looks like we can walk away. So we solve that particular issue and we walk away. But because of the positive relationship that we've had with the individuals, the clients, the organizations, and they enjoy working with us as opposed to us doing to them, inevitably they call us back for different things over time. And so we build up relationships and we see them evolve over periods of time. So if I was to give you local authority, for example, I've had at least, I think, 3 or 4 contracts with local authorities that lasted 4 years. And so I saw that, I was in that area, seeing that whole change growth. Now, if you know how local authority finance works, that's very, very rare because they are year-to-year finance. But we have input into that. And so I was able to see not only the local authority grow, but I knew the context and I was able to help the schools. So that's kind of where our heart is around. Relationships has to be at the heart of this, and we have to model it.
You've built up a fantastic business over a sustained period of time now. It's clearly extremely well thought out, and you've articulated that today. What advice would you give to other business owners that were on the same journey or embarking on the same journey that you're well into now?
I would say invest time at the beginning to be really clear on what it is you're going to do and why, and what your USP is. Define your values, your vision, and your mission. And writing those is not easy. I spend a lot of time supporting others doing that now, and have done for a couple of years. And sometimes it can take months to kind of really nail it. So again, have a transition plan. Sometimes it's good to be working and alongside that, developing the foundations of your business until those foundations are ready before you just jump in. Plan it out, be clear on your USP, continue to reflect. Okay, continue to reflect. As a teacher, reflective practitioner, that comes quite naturally to me. It's what we do in the classroom because we're constantly looking at what the children are learning, what they haven't learned, and how we move that forward. It isn't always, I've seen with entrepreneurs, it's not always their default. And so it can be because they're doers and they want to get things done. But you have to remember that you're here and your audience is here, and it's about how do you bring these two together. And I think the final top tip I would say is celebrate the 3-year mark and the 5-year mark. I've forgotten the exact figures, but very few businesses actually survive beyond 3 years and 5 years. I'm now, I think, about 17 years in. I've seen 2 recessions, I've seen COVID, a whole range of things. And we intentionally make time to celebrate some of those things with our partners, people who've helped us along the way, people who've encouraged us, people who've stood by us. Because I think, again, you can forget the journey you've had, and it's good to keep celebrating.
Anita, it's been an absolute joy to have you on, and thank you for coming, celebrating your journey today. It has been a really fantastic one. It's been great to see you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Folks, if you'd like to come and celebrate your journey and share the good news and the stories about your business, then just comment apply below, and we'd love to get you on. Until next time, bye for now.